And this is Dan Watson sitting in for Jay Zimbauer this evening with this edition of Car Time Radio. Now, Jay comes in once a week and answers your questions on every kind of possibility of this is broke, that's broke, this widget doesn't work, and that widget doesn't work. Well, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm here. I'll answer your questions about anything to do with lubricating oil, engine oil, transmission oil, gear lube, filtration, fuel additives, antifreeze, those kinds of things that you service your car with. And I'd ask you to hold your mechanical questions until the real mechanic comes back. Otherwise, it would be like the blind leading the blind, me trying to tell you how to fix the mechanical parts of your car, and that advice wouldn't be worth too much. So you've got the numbers to call in here at 407-674-1025 or 855-545-1025. So give me a call in here and keep me some company so as I don't have to get into too long of a soliloquy here and give you all that I know about synthetic and petroleum oils in a matter of minutes. But I do want to give you a little bit, stand on my soapbox before we take the calls, and give you some caution you to be careful when you're out in the marketplace buying motor oil. So far, across the country, in Missouri and Indiana and Michigan, these states have already busted some guys making some oils that just weren't what they claimed to be, and they turned out to be really substandard, and they would have been damaging to any vehicles that they went in. And these states got upset with that, and they banned these companies from selling product or operating inside those states. I might give you a little bit more information. Florida's not too tough on that. Doesn't seem like that our Consumer Protection Agency goes out and pulls a lot of oil off of the shelves and test it to determine if the consumer is getting what they're paying for. So you're going to have to protect yourself in the marketplace. And I'm not talking about if you go buy an oil that you're familiar with and they have a name and they advertise on TV, people like Valvoline, Castrol, Mobil. These big oil companies are going to make products to meet a standard because they have a long-term reputation in the marketplace. They're not going to sell you some really snake oil or junk. However, when you see oil that you don't recognize the name, you've never heard of such a thing, and the price on it seems to be too good to be true, and all those kind of factors, it should throw up some red flags for you because you can get burned. And these wonderful, modern, high-tech engines and transmissions and gear sets that we have in these automobiles, you've got to protect them. And there's nobody else that's really going to pay attention and give you the utmost protection except you, the owner. It's like today when you go in and you see the doctor and you get physicals and you get all these tests run and all these things done. If you read any of the articles in the AMJ, I should say, the American Medical Journal, what you're going to find is that these doctors tell you that there's so many disconnects today in the way that things are set up that you have to protect yourself and pay attention. It's the same thing with your car. You'll get a lot of varying information, and in the end, you kind of have to sort it out. But you do have something that didn't exist years ago. You have the Internet. And almost all of these products, Google it, as they say. Go online and Google that product and take a look and see what comes back. If you get information which seems to be all fluff and you can't find any technical information and there are no tech sheets, there's no really hard, fast technical information that you can get on the product, best advice, stay away from it, because all the companies that offer top-line products, they offer full technical support with technical data bulletins and information and call lines and anything that you want to do to find out about that product. So it's up to you to make sure that you get a quality product and you put it in your car. I think that everybody understands all this, and then I get questions throughout the week, people asking good questions, but they're simple questions that they really need to know. And I get these questions, and I'm glad to answer them and help people out and make sure they're getting the right stuff. But can you read the label on the oil bottle? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? If it says 5W30, well, what does 5W30 mean versus a 10W40? And if your car says that you should use a 5W20, does it make any difference if you put a 10W40 in it? See, these are questions that are simple, but they're really germane. They do make a difference on how well your car will perform and whether or not it's going to have a long life or a short life. Now, that number, 5W30, which is very common, is easy to understand. Just think of that W as standing for winter. So it's got a 5 winter rating, and then the second number, the 30, is what we call the operational viscosity of the oil. Ooh, wait, what is that word, viscosity? That sounds pretty chemistry to me. Well, it's not. When something is very viscous, it means it's thick, and it will flow like molasses. When it has a very low viscosity, it'll flow like water. So the thicker it is, the higher the viscosity. The thinner it is, the lower the viscosity. So a 40 viscosity oil is thicker than a 20 viscosity oil. All seems simple, but you might be surprised how many times these questions come up of what does it actually mean on that bottle. And so it's important for you to learn a couple things about that. Now, that 5W, 10W, or 0W tells you how that oil will react to cold weather. So if you live in Minnesota and you've got an extreme 20 below zero outside, then the 0W will flow quicker and easier than the 10W. So the smaller the number, the easier the oil will flow under cold conditions. See, it's got a system to it. It works out. It doesn't take long to figure it out. Now, I'm going to head to the phones here and take a question, but I will tell you that if you go and YouTube Dan Watson, that's that simple. It's my channel, Dan Watson on YouTube. You'll find about 70 YouTube videos that I have collected there over the years, all about oil. And you'll be very, very surprised how informative most of those are. They're very simple, very straightforward, but they'll give you a lot of information. Again, all you have to do is go to YouTube and put in Dan Watson. All right, let's see what Glenn has to ask here. Glenn, welcome to the show. What can I do for you?
All right, thanks. How you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, I wondered, and I'm looking at motor oils, and I see some of them have these anti-wear additives, and it seems like zinc is the most prevalent one, but I see some have, very few have molybdenum, if I'm pronouncing it right.
That's correct.
Is one more superior than the other one?
That's a very good question, Glenn. Let me start out by saying that a motor oil is a base oil that has additives put in it in order to tailor it for an internal combustion engine. And one of the aspects it has to do is to prevent wear between the moving parts, the bearings, the valves, the push rod, the piston ring, cylinder interface. All those things have to be protected against wear. Now, when we're talking about how you do that with a lubricant, with oil, if I could just keep a film of solid, good oil, thick, nice, thick little film between those moving parts, they would never touch each other and there would never be any wear. Unfortunately, that's called full fluid lubrication, and that's very difficult to achieve in most of the places inside of an automotive or an internal combustion engine. So we move into an area where the film won't quite stay there, so we need something on the surface to act as a sacrificial metal between the two steel parts so they don't come together. So we put a soft substance like zinc, and sometimes we'll also talk about the phosphorus that's in the oil, zinc and phosphorus, and those two things will be on the surface of the metal so that when that oil film can't keep that metal separated, then what happens is that the zinc and phosphorus will come in contact with each other and act as what you could call a solid lubricant, preventing steel to steel. And then by the time more oil flow comes and that little situation is corrected, but it'll happen again over and over and over. So we call that boundary lubrication, and it means that we're depending upon those additives to prevent wear when the full fluid cannot do it. Now, zinc and phosphorus have been in this operation for about 50 years, really, maybe 60, that they have been the principal elements that are added because they do some other things the way they add them, and it's a real nice package they put together. About 10 years ago, the EPA decided to place a limit on the amount of zinc and phosphorus that you could put in automotive oil as an effort to protect poisoning or to prevent poisoning catalytic converters. So they put a restriction and lowered the amount. So oils that were rated as SL, the rating on that tells you the classification of the oil, continued to have high levels of zinc and phosphorus, but the SM and the SN current rating now reduce the amount of zinc and phosphorus. Now, so that's the story with zinc and phosphorus, and yes, that is your anti-wear additive that gives you protection in boundary lubrication. Now, you ask about molybdenum, and here's the story on Moly. That's the short name for it, Moly. There's different types. Regular molybdenum that is put into extreme pressure additive situations in gears is not suitable to go in the application inside the internal combustion engine. However, there are some things called organic moly, which is a different molecule, which is in service in some situations in motor oil. But the reason that moly has found its way in is it's being added in order to make up for the lower levels of zinc and phosphorus in those oils. But only a few oil companies, I know Amsoil Synthetic contains organic moly to give it greater anti-wear capacity than you could get with the zinc and phosphorus that's allowed in the SN rated oil. But most oils will not have it. Organic moly is expensive. Most people are not going to put it in. They're going to stick with the zinc and phosphorus and keep it below 800 parts per million, which is the current limit. Now, I know this is all sounding very complicated, but your question opened up an area, and we're going to have to head to a break. But when we come back, I'm going to stretch that a little bit to explain to people where the high zinc and phosphorus really becomes necessary in what type of engine application versus where it's not quite as critical. So got to take a break, Glenn, and if you want to just hang up and listen, I'll be talking some more about that when we come back from the break. And welcome back to Car Time Radio. Dan Watson sitting in here today for Jay Zimbauer. And I guess it's okay to tell you I'll be here once a month on the first Wednesday. Jay is involved in some things he just cannot get away from. So he's asked me to sit in for him, and I'm glad to do it. And today we are talking about lubricants for your car, truck, boat, lawnmower, tractor, whatever you want to talk about that's got to do with lubrication. And the question we had in the first segment asked about zinc and phosphorus. And this is an issue that you will hear and read about on the Internet, and you'll hear in different places about that the oils have insufficient zinc and phosphorus for adequate protection. Well, that's half true, but it depends upon the type of camshaft and valve system that you have. Where you need higher zinc and phosphorus than what we have available in the current rated modern oil is when you have one of the older engines that has what they call solid lifters in a rocker arm and tappet situation. Now, those whole valve trains were designed when we used 40-weight oil and we had heavy loads of zinc and phosphorus in the oil because there's what they call a contact and sliding action when that camshaft comes around and hits that solid lifter to lift the push rod. It's really just a contact slide over that lobe. And that sliding action will push the oil film off, and it is only protected by the residual zinc and phosphorus that's on the surface, as I described in the first segment. So if you have a wonderful 1965 289 Mustang with solid lifters and high performance and a 4-barrel on it, you better find yourself some oil with good zinc and phosphorus levels. Now, Amsoil Synthetics, recognizing this situation, they came out with a special oil for those cars called Z-Rod oil, which has high levels of zinc and phosphorus designed specifically for those muscle cars and cars from the 60s and 70s. Now, the current level on U.S. rated oil of around 800 parts per million should be adequate for what they call, especially for the overhead cams, there's no problem there, but for what's called the roller cams, hydraulic lifter roller cams, what these guys are is on the bottom of the lifter there's a little roller that rolls over the camshaft lobe as it lifts it, and as long as that little roller's not stuck and it's rolling like a champ, the thinner modern oils with 800 parts per million should do just fine. I will caution you, though, if you have one of these cars made 95 to 2010, anywhere in there, and you hear that all too familiar tap when you start it up, it's tap, 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 tap. That's okay when it's cold and it just starts up. But within a little bit of time, and as the engine RPM picks up and it warms up, that tapping should go away. If it doesn't go away, you may have a collapsed lifter. And if you have a collapsed lifter, that little roller may not be rolling anymore, and it may be sliding over that camshaft. And if it does, I have inspected all too many of them where that one lobe of the camshaft is completely worn off and will not work or run, and you're into a $2,000 repair. And so if you hear the tapping, don't just put up with it. It needs to go away, especially after the vehicle warms up and the RPM picks up. So that's just a tip. Don't put up with that. It can end up costing you a lot of money. All right, so I was asked during the break, if you're here in Florida and we're talking about these different oils, what about we got 5W, 0W, and 10W, 30s? I mean, which one would be the best for Florida? And the answer is any one of the three, okay? Because there's not much difference in how any of those oils perform until you get them below zero on the winter side. Now, the second number, the 30 weight, is measured at 212 degrees, so it's the same for all three, but the actual W rating or the winter rating start up in cold weather, 0W, 5W, or 10W, in temperatures above 10 degrees above zero, you're just never going to tell any difference. So if it drops to 10 degrees here, it might be the last thing you're worried about is whether you have the right oil. We'll all be running around like we're crazed if it's 10 degrees, I assure you. There'll be panic everywhere. So when you buy oil for your vehicle, look in your owner's manual. And in most cases, that's what you need to do is follow what the manufacturer recommends, whatever that is. If it's 5W20, 5W30, 5W40. If your manufacturer recommends that oil, then stick with the manufacturer's recommendation. Now, I would say especially through the warranty period, you don't want to get crossed up with your manufacturer over your warranty. Now, we're going to take a break and go off and pay some bills, and when we come back, we'll be taking your calls and talking about lubrication for your car, truck, boat, tractor, whatever you'd like to talk about. And welcome back to Car Time Radio. Dan Watson sitting in today for Jay Zimbauer, answering your questions on oil, transmission fluid, gear lube, filtration, antifreeze, fuel additives, diesel engines, whatever you'd like to talk about, except I'm not going to be able to tell you how to fix your brakes or how to tune your car or those different things, because that's what the master mechanic Jay Zimbauer is for, and he'll be back next week. So give me a call here at 407-674-1025 or 855-545-1025. and we'll talk about oil. Now, one of the things that we hear, and it kind of comes off of the question we had about, well, which oil should you run in Florida? And I told you, stick with what your manufacturer recommends. Let me caution you a couple things. If you're going to use the manufacturer's recommended 20-weight engine oil, and there are people who say just don't use it, go to use the 30-weight oil, okay? What I will tell you, if you're going to stick with what the manufacturer recommends, you need to use somebody's reliable synthetic engine oil. And you might say, well, why do they want to force us to do that? You know, because I just have to spend more money, and is it worth it, and all that type of stuff. But let me tell you why I tell you that. Oils operate in temperature bands, and we call them normal operating and intermittent operating bands. Well, it turns out that a good 20-weight motor oil will operate in its normal operating band to about 240 degrees. Go above 240 degrees, it goes into the intermittent operating band. Well, what's bad about intermittent operating band? What's bad is that's where its viscosity breaks down due to thermal conditions. It's also where it oxidizes rapidly due to the high temperature. So what does that mean? It means it's going to produce sludge, and it's going to break down its viscosity and not provide the protection that you need in your engine. Is it going to immediately wipe the engine out? No. It's just going to have a little accelerated wear every time that it branches up into that intermittent operating range. Now, you might say, well, 240 degrees, I'm good. My car never gets over 200. Okay. Well, here's some news for you. That 200 degrees is the water temperature of your car, the water temperature going through the water jacket on the upper part of the engine. Oil runs 35 to 70 degrees hotter than the water temperature in your car. So now that you know that, if your car is running at 200 degrees, the oil's running about 230, 235. It's 5 degrees below the intermittent range for that 20-weight oil. Let's say that you turn on the air conditioner and you're in stuck traffic and things are heating up pretty hot and you're over 140-degree asphalt sitting there trying to get moving on your captive on I-4. Well, that means that your oil is now probably running 50, 60 degrees above the water temperature, so now oil's running around 250 degrees, maybe even 260. And if it's a 20-weight petroleum or petroleum blend, it's screaming. It's just screaming, ouch, what are you doing to me? You're torturing me at these temperatures, and it can't really handle that. Now, if you put in a good quality synthetic, you're going to raise that normal operating band upwards close to 300 degrees. If you use one of the AMSOIL Signature Series 20-weight oils, you'll raise it to about 340 degrees. So you're not going to get the engine hot enough to raise your oil temperature to 340 degrees without having some other problems on the engine, things like hoses starting to melt off the engine and different things. So that wouldn't be your worry about whether your oil was too hot if you got to those temperatures. You'd have all kinds of other problems, probably running from the car because it was on fire. But my point of telling you this is that the 20-weight oil recommendations in a lot of vehicles are based upon trying to achieve the maximum fuel economy. That's good. Everybody wants that. And if everything is perfect, then you probably stay within, a comfort band and things don't get out of hand. The problem is that in most people's driving experience, you're going to sooner or later reach some severe conditions, and you're not going to be able to stay in the sweet spot. And when it gets too hot, you'd like to know you have that reserve protection and you're not having accelerated wear due to that oil being outside of its normal operating band. So I suggest to you that you run a top-of-the-line synthetic if you're going to run 20-weight engine oil. Now, some people will tell you, well, just the next time it's time to change, move it to 30-weight. Okay, fine. You got to be a little careful because some of the manufacturers really take exception with that because they have different things in your engine, things called variable valve timing phasers. I thought phasers were for Klingons, but now they have phasers in your engine in order to change the variable timing of your valves. Anyway, and they get really picky, and I've been involved in some of these disputes with, the manufacturers about whether or not you have to use 20-weight oil in those engines. And many of the top best mechanics I know say that that's probably malarkey. But it doesn't matter when the guy holding your warranty is the one that tells you that you have to do that. So I tell you that the technical argument's one thing. The legal argument with your warranty is a whole different aspect. So I don't want to give you advice to get you in trouble with your manufacturer over your warranty. So I tell you, if it tells you to run 20-weight oil and you're under warranty, run the 20-weight oil and use the superior synthetic when you do it, and you'll be okay. Now, that's 20-weight oil because it comes up all the time. Let me give you another brain teaser and tell you that they are making Hondas in Japan right now with 0W16 coming off the line. Those are coming into the United States. God knows how we're going to react to that, because the incredible gnashing and teeth and wailing over 20-weight oil, I can't wait to see what happens when we get to 16-weight. But I will tell you this, that 16-weight is going to have to be a high-quality synthetic. There's no way. You cannot use sewing machine oil in an operating internal combustion engine and expect it to make it unless you make that oil out of some superior quality. It just can't take the temperature. So Toyota is bumper-to-bumper synthetic. They come out of the factory that way now, everything in it. So if you buy a Toyota, expect to buy synthetic engine oil. If you buy a Mercedes, it comes with synthetic engine oil in it. Expect to use engine oil. If you buy a BMW, bumper-to-bumper, synthetic. I think what that's telling us is that when the guys that make these super high-performance, expensive cars require synthetic bumper-to-bumper, they're telling us what they think of petroleum versus synthetic. They're telling us that they only want synthetic in their cars and their engines and transmissions. So that might tell us, the normal consumer, what the engineering world thinks of the difference between synthetic and petroleum lubrication. Okay, we can just read something into that, and we're not being wrong about it. Now, in Europe, they have 5 different levels of engine oil that you can buy. Here we have one certified by the API. In Europe, they have 5 different levels. Okay, if you own a European automobile, I can only plead with you to pay attention to what it says in your owner's manual. And in many cases, it will not allow you to use the latest API certified oil here in the United States. It does not meet the ACEA rating that came in that car when it was manufactured in Europe. Do not use something that is not certified for that car. You think you have troubles now to replace the exhaust system on a Mercedes-Benz that is set up with the most articulate exhaust system you can imagine. I believe they should be paid probably as air cleaners when they run around, because the air going out the tailpipe is probably cleaner than what came in the engine. But if you put the wrong oil in and it carries over and it wipes out that exhaust system, you're talking about $14,000. So this stuff is real. The technology is so sophisticated that you have to pay attention to what goes in your vehicle. And I will tell you what Jay would tell you. Be real careful where you take it for those oil changes, because sometimes taking it to the place that has the 1995 oil change out in front of it means that the level of expertise there may be at 1995 also, and they may put the wrong stuff in your very expensive, wonderful piece of technology that you bought. So pay attention to who works on your vehicle and pay attention to what goes in your vehicle. Okay, we're up against another break. And, hey, somebody give me a call out there and let me answer a question. It's 407-674-1025 or 855-545-1025. And welcome back to Car Time Radio. I got a caller on, so we're going to go straight to Derek from Kissimmee. And, Derek, what's your question?
Yes, sir. I've got an 08 Lincoln MKZ, and recently I realized I was down some transmission fluid. And, I've been involved in cars for years, and I said, I'm just going to run down and get some Type F. It's a Ford. It's Lincoln Ford. And I said, no, let me just check, let me call the dealer. And So I called today and said, oh no, it's you've got to get premium automatic transmission fluid. It's a special transmission fluid for the 6-speed transmission that's in the car. So, you know, I did. I went and got it for $8.69 a quart. But my question is there an alternative to this, or is it strictly a dealer-only item?
No. That 2008 Lincoln, it requires what's called a low viscosity. Ford calls it Mercon LV, and before that, the very same fluid was called Mercon SP. Okay, special. And what it is, it's a lower viscosity transmission fluid made to the Mercon specs for that transmission. And just about any reputable oil company right now, you can buy Mercon LV transmission fluid from Napa, from CarQuest, or any of these guys. It's not, but it is not Type F. Type F goes back to the 1960s. It's got a completely different shifting characteristic. See, transmission fluids, it's a good question, Derek, and you just have to bear with me for a minute. Transmission fluids are one of the most complex fluids that you put in the car because they have to act as a hydraulic fluid, moving plungers and parts around in the transmission. Then they also have to lubricate the moving gears. There are gears in an automatic transmission just as steel and just as heavy duty as it would be in a manual transmission. So that lightweight, about a 10 weight oil is got to lubricate these gears. It's got to act as a hydraulic oil, and it has to be, they put certain additives in it so that when the clutch packs are engaged in that transmission, that they will have a certain shifting characteristic. In other words, Ford wants a very smooth shift. They don't want your head to snap back. Now, if you put Type F in one of the transmissions, your head's going to snap back because the old 2-speed transmissions that were in the Fords in the 1960s and stuff, they just wanted that thing to go bang, bang, bang when it shifted, no slippage at all. But as they built these newer vehicles, they want them to have that nice, smooth shift. It means that those clutches have to engage gradually and not slam together and cause you to have tires bark and your head to snap back. So they put all this complex friction modifiers, let's call them that. I like to call transmission additives grabbers because they really affect how well the clutches grab together rather than friction modifiers like you'd have in an engine oil. But that transmission requires a fluid which cannot exceed 6.0 on the viscosity scale. Old Type F could be around 7.5 to 8, a lot thicker fluid. And those grabbers that are in it are really critical to having it shift correctly. Now, and Ford wants you to use that because actually if you change the shift in it, those clutch plates are designed for that soft, I don't know if you know what that looks like, but it looks like a set of wafers that come together, and they're very abrasive so that when they come together, they will, like heavy-grade sandpaper, they're going to come together and stick, and they're pushed together by hydraulic pressure with one of the wafers being attached to the shaft and the other wafer being attached outside of that concentrically, if you understand what I mean. And the wafers are pushed together, and that's how now we're pushing power to the gear that it wants to go to. So, yeah, it's critical to use the right transmission fluid. And people need to understand this listening to this show is that if there's one thing you don't want to mess with, it's the recommendation of the transmission fluids that come from your manufacturer of those transmissions. It is so incredibly critical because they use the fluid as part of the way they get the transmission to perform like they've designed it to perform. So when you change the fluid, you now screw up the whole system that they've designed of how it's going to shift, how much torque is going to be applied instantly to the shafts. All that stuff is calculated and worked out. And if you took that transmission and put a Type F in it and it started banging hard, it would only last probably 4,000 or 5,000 miles before it would break the clutch pack systems in it, and you might as well take it down, unbolt it, use it for a heavy-duty paperweight, and put another one in because it would cost a fortune to overhaul it.
So it's basically just any Mercon LV, it will work.
Yeah, that's a Mercon LV application. I've dealt with too many Fords, and that's okay. Mercon LV 2008. it's a good transmission, and it's a excellent vehicle, and Ford's called out exactly what they want in it. Now, mentioning that, you can't go somewhere where they tell you, well, we got one transmission fluid that meets all categories, because it just won't work. There's these people running around selling transmission fluid that they claim is a universal, fits everything. You can't do it. Some of the transmission fluids, like Chrysler ATF Plus 4, requires that you have to be above 7, and Mercon LV requires that you have to be below 6. I find that impossible to put both of those in the same bottle. So stay away from that. Ask for the stuff specifically that you want. Tell them you want Mercon LV transmission fluid and something that's rated Mercon LV. Many people can make them, but it's got to be Mercon LV rated.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
All right. Good car. Take care of it. All right, folks, got just a little bit of time left. Somebody wants to give me a call, 407-674-1025 or 855-545-1025. I can get that out. I'll get used to it. And we're just talking about transmission fluid, and I want to tell you this. The most complex piece of machinery in your car is your automatic transmission. That has to be a mechanical engineer's marvel. I know it's come together by many pieces over the years. Not one guy's responsible for it, but mechanical engineers got to sit back, break out his stogie, light it up, and smoke that thing and say, look what we made. Because that automatic transmission, especially now we got 6 speeds, we got 8-speed automatic transmissions, we got all these. They're incredibly intricate, and they work like a fine-tuned watch. And what you want to do is keep them exactly pristine, just like the manufacturer makes them. And what can you do in that aspect? Jay Zimbauer would tell you, if you don't want to run a high-performance synthetic transmission fluid, then you need to change your transmission fluid in Florida once a year. You can take it in and have it serviced if you're going to use petroleum, because it can't take the heat, simply can't take the heat. So if you want to contact me, go to my website. Here locally, it's really easy. It's LubeDepot.com. That's LubeDepot.com. And again, you want to watch my videos, go to YouTube, check out the channel. All you got to do is put in Dan Watson. That's how I'm recognized as my channel. And there's all kinds of YouTubes with nothing but, well, I do have a face for radio, I will say that, but I am on those videos with some pretty good information. So don't get taken back too much by the old man talking, but do pay attention to the information. I think you would get a lot out of it. And I'll be back in about 1 month on the first Wednesday of next month, filling in for Jay Zimbauer. So until then, keep rolling. He shook his head and said, "This ain't good."